Hey, Chuckle Crime Nerds. So this is me from the future coming back to have a little commentary before you watch this whole video, because I recorded it on Monday, March 16th. That was as closing arguments in the Kouri Richards case were happening right then. I hadn't seen the closing arguments, and literally moments after I finished recording, I got a notification saying the verdict was in. Like, what? So I still thought, for those who like my takes, I thought I would still put out the video. And even though we're a few days late here, old news in that sense, but my takes are still around. So this is my reactions on the last days of the trial before closing arguments as things stood on Friday when they recessed for the weekend. So I'll be covering closing arguments. I did go live for the actual verdict if you want to see that. But then I'll be moving on to some other cases and doing some review of catching up on some other past ones that I've been following. So yeah, that's feature me. Had to say all that, and here's the video. Time to update you on the last few days of the Kouri Richards trial before closing arguments. There's a lot that happened, some surprises. Here we are with the defense and the state having rested. I have concerns. I have some very big concerns. Let's get into it. So one of the first big things that happened in the last 3-4 days of trial of the last week, March 10th through 12th, we ended up with Carmen Lauber being brought back. There was a whole debate with the defense claiming that the state had withheld information that would discredit her and blah, blah, blah. Eventually, the state said, sure, we'll bring her back. They had no questions, but then Ms. Nestor came and crossed her. They tried to poke more holes into her credibility, which I think is problematic all by itself, because she attacked her as a woman who was sucked into drugs as a child, as an 11 or 12-year-old little girl, and who's been fighting ever since, who managed to stay clean while pregnant, but has fallen back in, who was scared of fentanyl because her daughter had a fentanyl overdose, survived it, fortunately, but she's been battling and trying to get through drug court and keeps relapsing, and she's been struggling. So to have Ms. Nestor just say, oh yes, well, all addicts are liars, just dismissively like that, to have her call out Carmen's learning disability, which is probably tied to drugs and stunting her brain, but her inability to read well, making her cry on the stand as a result, not a good look. We talked about that, right? You remember that? Not a good look. So they brought her back, and this time Ms. Nestor was the one questioning, and it didn't go terribly well. They did poke a few little holes here and there, but overall, I don't think it probably swayed the jury either direction. If they already had an opinion, it probably strengthened it. So I thought we'd look at just a couple of clips from the police interviews. That was what they were saying, is that the state had misconstrued, misrepresented, and so here we are. Let's fine. We'll show you some of these clips then. Let's do that.
And the only thing that they're willing to kind of help you out with is if you can help us out with this.
And by so he means like give us the details that will ensure Kouri gets convicted of murder.
Oh my God!
This is a serious case, Carmen. I'm not trying.
That is way more of my.
I know. And listen,
Don't freak out.
Pretty intense, huh? That's her first time she realized that, oh my goodness, Kouri is being charged with murder. Holy crap. Now, here's one interesting thing. They brought up some search warrants they did on Carmen's house. They brought up Detective Driscoll. His testimony had issues. We'll go more into that in a minute, but focusing on Carmen right now. He talked about how they ended up interested in Carmen and arresting her and then all of that, and then getting her cooperation. While they're in her house, let's take a peek of a couple of things that they found, which I found a little interesting. So first, she had this little shrine of all these like quotes and uplifting things to help her, and right smack in the middle is Eric's obituary. So I circled it, and I put the picture that's on his obituary there. That's my picture on top. A little disturbing. So I think she already felt guilty, knowing that drugs she had purchased might have led to his death. And she puts a dead center in this mirror of her focus of like vision board, uplifting quotes. I don't know if it's a prayer area, whatever, but he is right there in the middle. I think she knew that her actions had a part in Eric's death. And to only strengthen that idea, they also found these baseball caps hanging on her wall, one of which is from C&D Stonemasonry. That is Eric's stonemasonry company that he co-owned. And she had one of his hats hanging on the wall. She never worked for C&D Masonry. Couple of things that for me made me go, interesting. I think she felt guilty and wanted to make amends. Let's look a little bit more of Carmen talking to police.
Check phone records as we, do all of our part, our side to corroborate what you're saying, right? And I think a good starting point for that is a written statement. For you to sit down and write out what you told us in the best order that you can remember.
And my favorite, everything I just told you, I probably wouldn't remember what order I told you in.
It's okay. And that's fine, because you know what? We want to make sure we get the right story. And so the way you're remembering it is all you can give us. You can't make something up that you don't remember, right?
Right.
She was struggling to remember. And I appreciate that O'Driscoll was making a good point of saying we need you to remember. We need actually the truth. We need to corroborate your statements. We need you to remember details, but we want the truth. A little bit of a problem where they did provide maps and calendars and all of these things to jog her memory. And the way human memory works, they could have planted memories. So that's a little bit of a concern. That's for the jury to decide how credible she is on that.
We can, like blueprint.
You're the biggest piece.
I don't want to be that big piece.
Well, the good news is that big piece helps you out tremendously.
That's what, like I said,
You hold all the
I
cards.
love Eric. He was a damn good dude and he didn't deserve it. It was done intentionally. He did not deserve it.
We believe you, and that's why we're here working on what your get out of jail free card looks like, based on this information. But there's 3 little boys that don't have a dad. There's a family that doesn't have a brother.
She's saying that Eric is a good dude. If he was murdered, he didn't deserve that.
But like you guys said, she's living her life right now, and that's everybody else suffering. Like them
That's
little
what it
boys
appears.
love their daddy.
I'm sure they did.
I've seen it. Eric was that was his prized possession. Them boys were his everything. And people complain about he was gone all the time, or he worked so much, but you know what? At the end of the day, when he come in, them boys were there. And he was, like I said, that it weighed heavy on me.
That weighs heavy on me. What a good dad Eric was. Now, I found it very interesting, and I have yet to hear anybody else mention this. She never says, Kouri couldn't have done this. No way. Instead, she says, Eric didn't deserve it. To me, that is incredibly telling. Usually, if people who hear, that my neighbor did this, is accused of this horrible thing, no way. That's them? No way. She doesn't say that about Kouri at all. I think that is one of the most telling things in this whole thing. So one thing I wanted to point out about the area that this trial is happening in Summit County, I've seen people commenting online and saying things along the lines of, oh, well, Mormon's going to have a huge impact on how this case turns out. Actually, probably not, and here's why. Summit County, well, first of all, a lot of people also think it's this teeny tiny county. There's a mix of cities and rural national forest stuff, but it is not a teeny tiny population. People have said, I've heard people say 5,000 people 55 years ago. I think the 1970 census said something about 5,000-ish people. Today, there's more like 43,000. It's not like a metropolis, but it's not tiny either. And Summit County is the most diverse county in the state as far as religious views. So only like 36%, I think it was, of residents consider themselves LDS. In Salt Lake County, it's roughly, I think, 40%. If looking at a jury, it's not going to be majority LDS people. So just throwing that one out there, and it is a bigger population than most people think. And so I don't think the Mormon element is going to have a huge impact. Kouri wasn't LDS anyway. We know that Eric was, although it doesn't sound like he was particularly practicing any longer. We heard from Detective Woody, who was the first detective. She wanted to be on the canine unit, eventually got that job. So O'Driscoll then was the one that appointed the investigator later. The thing that frustrated me about the cross of O'Driscoll is that, yes, he's the lead investigator. Yes, I think he should have prepared a little bit more to be on the stand, reviewing evidence in the whole case. There is a lot to it. But I felt like Nestor was poking at him on not knowing certain things that aren't in his wheelhouse anyway. Like the digital evidence and that kind of thing, where it's like, that's not something he would probably know or remember because that wasn't his specialty.
Clip of the locations where Eric was on February the 14th of 2022 based on geolocation in his phone?
Objection, Your Honor. Foundation.
He didn't object there.
I don't know whether this witness would have the basis to know that, so sustained for now, if you can lay some foundation.
I understand what you're asking. As you've been preparing for this case, have you been reviewing the demonstrative exhibits that the state prepared to get ready for trial?
Not all of them, and not this one. I've just seen it in court.
Okay.
So at least they objected on that one, but there were a lot like that where I felt like this, again, just like with that one, it's not his specialty. Why are we not objecting on these other ones? It was frustrating to watch. Then there was this other moment where I was like, oh, interesting. What does that mean? I wish we could have heard the answer to that. Did the jury catch it?
In 10 different times of searching, was there ever any fentanyl recovered?
Sleeping's hard. How to answer.
Throughout the 10 search warrants, anything that was recovered during those search warrants that we suspected may contain fentanyl, have traces of fentanyl, were sent to the state lab.
Okay.
We got results back from the state lab. There were some items that.
It
Your Honor, may we
was,
approach?
Okay.
Just me. I was like, what was he about to say? And the state is the one who wanted to approach. It wasn't an objection. I suspected because maybe that would be evidence not allowed to be entered, or I don't know. But I was like, oh, they found something. They found somewhere. We don't know. And why was that? I want to know. Inquiring minds want to know. Another hole that they tried to poke was this one, which I thought was a little ridiculous.
Sit here today. Can you even tell this jury the exact time that Eric Richens died?
I don't know that anybody can.
Can you tell this jury how fentanyl got inside of Eric Richens? Based on evidence, not speculation or theory, but evidence.
I know it was orally ingested.
And that's all you know, right?
That's not all I know, but I know it was orally ingested.
Okay, again, wait, what? That's not all I know. She's making a whole lot over the fact that we don't know the exact time of death. That shouldn't matter. I mean, Tylee, anyone? JJ? We don't know exact times of death. And with Tylee's case, we don't know even manner of death. We know manner. We don't know cause of death. And yet we have 2 people convicted of her murder. And if Alex were alive, we'd have 3. But they're making a lot out of that. Cases are very different, but not knowing exactly when that night into that morning he died, that's irrelevant and innocence or guilt, in my opinion. We saw a whole bunch more texts. This whole conversation that happened in January, 2 months before Eric died, between him and Kouri. That was just sad. She was asking for estimates from him on how much the Midway mansion would cost to fix up as far as HVAC and the driveway and the different things. And he's like, I don't really know, but we're not doing that, right? I don't have the ability to take on that kind of project. That was hard to watch. Okay, I'm going to show a couple of pictures. This is where generally I try to avoid judging anything on appearances. I will say that Kouri, for most of the trial, has worn very neutral things like all black or all creamish white, professional looking things. The other day she also wore a bright yellow shirt with a gray blazer. And then one day she wore this. To me, that looks like a thrift store draperies. I don't understand. I do not understand. Where was the choice, the thought process? That does not fit the vibe that we've been going for throughout this entire thing. However, on the same day, Ms. Nestor, I thought she looked the best she has the entire trial. Is it just me? I'm like, that color looks fantastic on you. I love that. And the wispy bangs and the necklace. I thought she looked fantastic. So, but she was sitting next to, maybe that's one reason Kouri looked even worse to me, because Ms. Nestor looks so good. I don't know. Her book, the children's book that she wrote supposedly for her sweet children to help them deal with the death of their father and the grief and how messed up that is. So interesting things with this. I do wonder how the jury will respond to that information. Is that going to be a shock? Is that going to turn them off? On the one hand, it will make her look like even more of a horrific person, horrible person that's just trying to monetize her husband's death. On the other hand, she was in horrific debt, and she wasn't going to get the money she thought she was, and this is a way to try to get out of that debt, bootstrapping, potentially. I don't know. Not to clarify, she didn't actually write it. She paid a ghostwriter and an illustrator. Ghostwriting it's a thing. In fact, any celebrity who writes a book, we can guarantee they didn't actually write it. There was a ghostwriter behind them. And if it's a good ghostwriter who has a good name in the business, they can get their name on the cover or somewhere on there as well. And it'll say like Kouri Richens with so-and-so, and with so-and-so is the person who actually did the writing. But in this case, she would just hire a ghostwriter, and then she would retain all of the copyright herself and ownership entirely. The thing I found interesting is the way the police found out about it. She went on a TV show called Good Things Utah. It's an ABC affiliate local show. I've been on it a couple of times. She applied to be on it. They had her on. And then someone anonymously emailed the station and said, just so you know, there's some question marks, blah, blah. And then she was actually arrested a couple of months later. I'm not sure at what point the police became completely aware of everything, but it sounds like they became aware of the book in March of 2023, a year after Eric's death, when the book was first available. Here's the wild thing. Check this out. They were sent a copy of the book anonymously. So there's the cover, and there's a little note there, and I'll zoom in on that note. And it's the image that we got was, I had to zoom in on it. It's just a little bit blurry, but you can still read what it says. A gift for you. So there are two sides to every story. This is the true Kouri, a devoted wife and adoring mother. Thought you should know. From Anonymous. Interesting. Sounds like whoever emailed the station was not on Kouri's site. So probably one of Eric's sisters, like Katie or Amy. But this, so it was just like, Kouri's a wonderful person. She's such a great mom. There's a different side to this that you haven't been aware of. So who sent this copy and who sent this note? Not who we expected. Seriously, when I heard this in trial, my jaw dropped open. I was babysitting one of my grandkids, and I was like, wait, what? Make sure my grandson wasn't going to fall off the couch, because I was like, this is crazy. Subpoenaed Amazon. This is the order information. It was ordered on March 21st of 2023 at 6:41 p.m. UTC time. So it's probably like 1 p.m.-ish or something like that in Utah at that point. Wait till you see who. Kouri's mother. Kouri's mother bought it, sent it to the police. This is 2 months before she's arrested, mind you. She's been investigated on some level, but she hasn't been arrested. Yeah. I don't think this had the effect you wanted it to, Mom. Just throwing that out there. So then we got to see some texts between Kouri and her brother, Ronnie. So this is Ronnie. This is him a year or so ago talking to media about how his sister is innocent. I find it interesting that no one called him to the stand, especially regarding the walk the dog letter, which we'll get to in just a second. Okay, so this is a note from Kouri to her brother. It turned out so cute. Just something for the boys. Just something for the boys. Keep that in mind. Put it in the back of your pocket there. And to understand the book writing process to get ready for the big one. The big one. To understand the book writing process to get ready for the big one. Sounds like she's preparing for another much larger book. Or is that me? Her brother says, good luck, little sis. You have nothing to worry about. Stay calm. Why would you have to stay calm? Says, thanks, bro. I'm excited. I don't really feel like it's real until I have an official copy, though. So we will see. I really just want to understand the book process, so I'm ready to go. Again, for the next big one. I've already spoke to a writer for my book. So another ghostwriter for her main book. I'm debating starting it now, and they can start on quite a few chapters before all this is over just to get a jump start. Not sure. The kids' book wasn't bad at all, assuming everything turns out the way it's supposed to cost. It's supposed to cost $2,500, which actually, figuring the illustrations, that's not bad. The bigger book, and then yes, we have to change names. So yes, she's planning a bigger book, and you have to change names. I also want to talk to my attorney about other precautions to take to avoid a lawsuit from them for defamation, or if changing names is enough. In this case, probably not enough. That book will be expensive. Just for the ghostwriter to write the manuscript, 130 pages is $5,000. I'm going to say a book for like grown-ups, like a memoir about her story of her husband dying or whatever, it would need to be at least twice that length, if not 3 times. I'm assuming it will be closer to 250 pages, but that's probably printed pages, not Word document pages. So $10,000 for the manuscript, I would guess more. And then I would also plan on more than that for editing, and then proofreading, and then formatting. And then there's a lot of steps that she doesn't even know about. She doesn't know what she doesn't know. Total time, 2 to 4 months. I would say more than that to get it done right anyway. I might just start my recordings now and wait to sign up until May when more money comes in, hopefully, LOL. So she's hoping to make money with the first book, which again, you could read that 2 different ways. I get it. Oh, and she also adds this. I had them add this picture in the beginning. I tried to zoom in and it's blurry, but it looks like there is a picture of 2 adults and 3 little kids. So like the whole family, which is sweet if it weren't under kind of gross circumstances here. She says, yeah, the next 30 days are just extreme marketing. My goal is to sell 100,000 books by the end of the year. And there's another text earlier where she says that she should make about $5 a book through Amazon. But if she sells them herself, she'd get more. I imagine that's through Ingram Spark, printing them that way. But selling 100,000 books, that is much harder than you think it is, especially a physical copy, not an ebook. So good luck with that, Kouri. And it did not happen, obviously. As she goes through this whole thing of writing the book, and I'm just trying to learn this, and I want money. And she's clearly not a writer at heart. She doesn't care about writing. Based on the texts and the communications we had with Josh actually might, if he were to write something, I would think he might actually have the chops for it. As a human being, this whole situation just fills me with horror. As a writer who has worked on the craft her entire life, pretty much, since I was 5 years old, this is kind of what it felt like to me. There's this moment in Seinfeld.
I wanted to talk to you about Dr. Watley. I have a suspicion that he's converted to Judaism purely for the jokes.
And this offends you as a Jewish person?
No, it offends me as a comedian.
On some level, I get it. As a writer, this whole thing, I mean, as a human being, as a mother, as a grandmother, as a wife, this whole situation is horrifying. But her book and her attitude toward the writing and just trying to sell it, and just, that offends me as a writer. Just Kouri. So that's just one more bit of have some respect for something in this world. Something. Can you please have respect for something? Apparently not. Was Eric sued? The defense was like, we don't need to have this little text message exchange come in because he wasn't. We're not arguing that he was sued. We know that he did this on purpose. It was an accident. But the state managed to get it in. And I think it's important. And here's why. So this is her talking to her brother, DJ. Conversation says, did Eric ever talk about suicide? And it's not suicide specifically. He would always say things like, if anything ever happened to me, you guys would be set for life. Like when he would go hunting or snowmobiling, that kind of thing. A little bit damning to me because that shows it had occurred to her that he would be worth a lot dead. And that Eric was making sure that his boys would be taken care of if he were to pass. And he did. He made sure that he put the trust together when he found out that Kouri was taking money out of the house, that she couldn't touch it. And she didn't know that until after he died. And she tried to change some life insurance things, and that didn't work. And she realized that Cody was going to get it because he was part of the business, and never mind. She knew that he was trying to take care of his family, specifically the boys, not necessarily her, because he didn't trust her any longer. Following the whole Lori Vallow situation, and now this one, here's a pro tip, okay, from a true crime junkie. If you are concerned that your partner might try to off you to get insurance money, and then you decide to change the beneficiary, whether it's insurance or a trust or whatever it is, make sure your partner knows you changed it so they know that killing you won't actually give them the money. Don't just change it. Make sure they know that you changed it so that the motive goes away. Little tip. Okay, let's talk about the walk the dog letter. For most of the trial, they would show screenshots of text messages and they would just scroll through them silently. This time, they had O'Driscoll read the entire letter. So, walk the dog letter, what is it? It is like 4 or 5 pages handwritten that they found in her cell in jail, hidden inside a book. There was a lot of brouhaha over whether like her privacy had been violated. Problem is, in jail, like, that's not a right you have to be. You don't expect to have privacy. They can come in and search you in your area anytime they want. So they found this letter, and the belief is that she had planned to just like hold it up to the glass when her mother was visiting, so her mom could read it, and nothing would be exchanged verbally. And that her mom never actually saw it, or Kouri did destroy it after her mom did see it, or who knows. But the idea behind the whole thing is that she is telling her mom, take notes. This is a quick thing, but it's really important. Tell Ronnie that he needs to testify to X, Y, and Z. And essentially, it's the supposed conversation that Ronnie, her brother, had with Eric about how he would go to Mexico for drugs, and how then he had asked Kouri to get drugs from Carmen. So she actually admits to getting drugs from Carmen, which I thought was interesting on that one. But she says you have to connect it back to Mexico. That's the important part. That Eric got drugs from Mexico. And she weaves in some things that we know are true, like the fact that this is from Allie Staking's testimony, that he had put THC gummies into her luggage when they would go on a trip so that if they were found, that she would get in trouble, not him. But so she says that he would slip illicit drugs into her luggage, slipping things in that could be true, but we don't know. But the way she's phrasing things, especially the whole walk the dog at the top of the page, nothing about a dog anywhere in there. But a lot of people theorize, hypothesize, whatever, that walk the dog means take control of the situation, manipulate things how these need to get done, make sure this thing happens. Code for that type of thing. So there was a lot of will be allowed in, and it was, with some redactions. Defense's argument is that the whole letter was just truth. It was reminding her mother to tell Ronnie to remember about this conversation, and to then Mom, so here's what they were talking about, that everything in there was real and true, and it's just like, this is what we need to make sure comes out, not witness tampering.
Sure, Jan.
Could read it either way. With the whole walk the dog at the top, it seems really suspicious to me, especially when they brought in one of Eric's oldest friends, go back to at least high school, if not younger, and saying that, no, I've never known Eric to do any kinds of drugs, not even the Red Devil drugs that the high schoolers were doing, which was a hilarious moment all by itself. So I'm going to show you that.
Was it your understanding that Red Devils were an illicit street drug?
I don't know what an illicit street drug entails, but I assumed that the Red Devils were being abused, as that's what high school kids were doing.
So people were doing that in your school?
I heard that, yes.
And did you know what Red Devils...
Later on in life.
Did you know what Red Devils were?
I learned later on what those were, yes.
What are those?
I believe it's Sudafed.
Oh, it's Sudafed?
I think. I'm not a drug person. I'm sorry.
Okay. Could be pseudoephedrine, maybe.
Sudafed. He might have done Sudafed in high school. Yeah. Then that whole conversation led to this whole thing about outside of the jury's presence, this big, long debate between the defense and the state with the judge about impeaching him on his statement in the preliminary hearing, because here he is admitting that he had seen or heard of Eric doing drugs, but then the judge saying, well, Sudafed is not an illicit street drug, and trying to define illicit versus illicit street, blah, 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 blah. It just went on and on and on. Eventually, the state won on that one, and Ms. Nestor was not allowed to impeach him. Kind of dragged out, and it was a bit mind-numbingly boring, to be honest. Some other witnesses that I've kind of just blown through were that had a handwriting expert analysis who looked at the life insurance application that Kouri allegedly took out without Eric knowing, showing that the signature was probably not done by Eric. And some of the characteristics of the allegedly forged signature match Kouri's style of writing, specifically whether or not they lifted the pen. Eric lifted the pen in the middle of his signature, and Kouri never did in hers. And in the forged one, the pen never lifts. Take that for what you will. The private investigator he was hired by the trust, so Katie and the Richards family primarily. He's able to get a GPS tracker on her car, which is a little freaky to think that a private investigator can do that. You apparently have to go through some channels to get approval, but it doesn't sound like it was that hard. He was able to go into the house, and Ms. Nestor tried to get on his case about some of that, about, oh, well, if people weren't with you, how do we know what you did? And he had a camera running the entire time, like a GoPro. At one point, she tried to impeach him and saying, like, oh, well, didn't you hear you're taking something out of the house right here? You said you didn't take anything, but you're taking a laptop. See this picture? And he goes, that's my laptop. I had it with me inside the house to take notes, and I'm taking it back outside. That's my laptop. So that impeaching didn't work. Nice try, Ms. Nestor. Some of her impeaching worked, some did not. That was a swing and a miss. And he was one of the best witnesses, honestly. He was one of the most even-keeled and professional witnesses. He was just like stating facts, keeping emotion out of it, explaining why he did things and what he discovered and that kind of thing. And there was a point where they said, oh, well, did you talk to Ms. Richards? And this is Ms. Nestor trying to impeach him or show that he wasn't being ethical or whatever. And he said that she tried calling him once, and basically he shut her down and said, you need to talk to your attorney. I won't talk to you unless it's with your attorney. So he did the right thing. He knew what he was doing. Interestingly, this is a man who has never actually been in law enforcement. Most PIs are retired law enforcement of some kind, and he's not. He's just been a PI for forever, it sounds like. He also garnered some sympathy because he had just had some cervical spine fusions, and so halfway through he goes, I'm having a hard time keeping my neck up, can I put my brace on? So he had to put his brace on, which, you know, it looks good. I'm sure he really didn't need it, but doesn't hurt your case either. Comes to something he found. He found this orange notebook, and he left it on the bed and told the police you probably should go back and find it. There's a whole lot of stuff in the orange notebook where she is basically writing out by hand supposedly what happened. And so on Thursday, March 3rd, this is the day before Eric died, it's all normal and this and that and the other. And so she walks through everything supposedly that happened. Now, it's interesting because she does contradict herself in several key points. When she told Chelsea on the phone, she's just like, oh, I was like just frantically just screaming at Eric, please don't leave me, wake up, come back, as I'm doing CPR. I tried so hard to bring him back. We've heard the 911 call. We've heard her do CPR. The dispatcher had to say, count. I can't hear you counting. Count with me. 1, 2, 3. She was not screaming at Eric to come back. She was not. She also claimed that as soon as the EMTs told her that he didn't make it, she ran to the bathroom and threw up. And then she was still in the bathroom when her mom came, and she never went to the bathroom. She never threw up. She was just sitting there in the living room with her head in her hands. I think because she didn't know how to react. She wanted to make sure it sounded like and looked like she was crying and was grieving. But if she lifted her head up at any point, then it might be revealed that she actually was faking it and didn't have tears or whatever. Lawyer, Peter Tragos, he has chimed in on this part of the Orange Notebook. There are several pages that are just a chronology. She lists out what happened when and what date and what order and what time. He thinks this is a nothing burger because as a lawyer, he's told many clients to write out a chronology and do it as soon as you can because memory fades and changes, and the closer you are to the event, the better you'll remember something. So it's a good idea to write out a chronology. But it sounds like she did it very late in the game and it doesn't match reality. I think the Orange Notebook was actually preparing for her big book that she was hoping to write and then become a bestseller, even though she didn't do the writing or any of the work because she's not a writer and has no respect for the process. So if anyone is interested in seeing the actual images from court of the Orange Notebook and the Walk the Dog letter, I can post those elsewhere on my website. Let me know if you want them so I know whether or not to post them, but I'm happy to do that. Didn't want to have your time like listening to the whole thing right now. You're just kind of giving a summary of what is in them. I'm sure I've forgotten some things. It's been a big week, but those are the things that really stood out. There are some funny moments when they were going over jury instructions on Friday that I thought were just hilarious, coming from a writer's standpoint, especially. A little short with that. I'll link to that in the comments and the description. Also, a video I put together that basically calls her out on lying to Officer Wen about when she called 911. Not when she said she did. Let's just put it that way. But you can go watch that. So here we are. Now, closing arguments happened on Monday the 16th. We shall see. I think there's a lot of loose ends that need to be tied together. As we stand on Friday, the state, I think, is in danger because there are too many possible explanations for things. We still don't know exactly how the fentanyl got into his system. We can guess. We think it's the drink, but we don't know. I actually think it's more likely to have been here's some allergy pills, Eric. And because she said that there were fentanyl pills in an allergy bottle in the truck. What if that's true, but she's the one who put them there? And that's why they can't find them now because then Kouri took the truck before she could clean it out. And then he just thought it was allergy pills. There are too many possible explanations as to how the fentanyl got into his system. We don't know. So there are things like that. There are explanations for it. Ms. Nestor said, like, oh, what wife hasn't signed her husband's name? Which I think I mentioned in an early video when I was like, hi, me, I've never done that. That's a weird thing. Confession much? That's bizarre. But no, that's not something most of us do. If that's something the jury thinks is reasonable, who knows? It's just, I struggled. I think she did it. But I don't know if the state proved it enough to the jury. We shall find out. We shall see. We should have the jury should have the case on Monday. I don't think they'll have a verdict the first day. Oftentimes it's supposed to review their instructions. Let's just kind of get a feel for things. Let's go home and sleep on it the most. I think they'll come back on Tuesday. We might get a verdict at the end of the day Tuesday. I would not be surprised if we go into Wednesday because there are so many facts that they have to determine and decide what is true, what is not a fact. My thought is that she will be found guilty on the insurance fraud and forgery because those are smaller charges. That she will be found not guilty on the attempted aggravated big M on Valentine's Day because there's not necessarily quite enough on that. But then maybe if they let her off on that, they'll feel good about convicting on the actual big M in March. I can see them kind of compromising in that way. It's like we're sure she did the actual deed in March. But the Valentine's Day can't really prove that. Maybe not. Think she did, but well, what if we say not guilty on that one? Then we can feel better about that. So that's my prediction. Who knows? Just thinking what would the jury potentially argue or worry about? I could be completely wrong. And maybe she'll walk entirely or be convicted on everything. Who knows? I have no idea. Let me know what you think in the comments. Your thoughts if you've been watching any of this or not in general, just thoughts. What do you think about any of this? It's just wild and crazy. And like all the cases we cover here, let me know what you think. Like, follow if you haven't yet, subscribe, all the good stuff. Share with your friends so they can find this. Makes a big difference in all and people who are finding things who like this kind of stuff. So we'll see if I can get this one up before we have a verdict. See you next time.